The Galactic Empire stretched across thousands of stars. It ruled with fleets of warships, endless armies, and a throne that had never known defeat. Its leaders believed no enemy could ever rise high enough to threaten their power. But one day, a rumor began to spread. At first, it was only a whisper, told by frightened traders who came from the edges of known space. They spoke about a people called humans. Most of the Empire had never seen one, only heard that they were late arrivals to the galaxy, a small species from a blue planet on the far side of the stars. The rumor said these humans had no great fleets, no mighty armies, and no ancient empire. Yet everywhere they went, fear followed them. In the Empire's grand council chambers, the senators laughed when the story first reached them. How could a young race with no real weapons frighten entire star systems? The Empire's generals dismissed it as nonsense, nothing more than tales told to stir up panic in the colonies. But then the reports continued to arrive. And this time, they came from the Empire's own scouts. One scout ship returned from the frontier carrying strange news. The crew reported that when a handful of humans walked into an alien stronghold, the defenders laid down their weapons without a single shot fired. Another ship carried the tale of a pirate fleet that abandoned its territory after learning that a group of humans had settled on a nearby planet. No battles, no wars, just silence, followed by surrender. The generals scoffed again, but their eyes were uneasy. "It is only coincidence," one of them said. "It is fear of the unknown. Once we meet them on the battlefield, these humans will fall like any other enemy." Yet none of them could explain why proud warriors from the outer colonies, who had resisted the Empire itself for centuries, now bent the knee the moment they heard the word human. The rumor grew darker with every retelling. People said humans carried an aura, something invisible, something that made even the bravest soldiers lose their strength. Some claimed they could look into an alien's eyes and see every secret fear buried inside. Others whispered that humans were not conquerors at all, but survivors from a death world so cruel that every other race in the galaxy would collapse in their place. In the markets of the capital, merchants lowered their voices whenever the subject arose. In the barracks, soldiers began to ask each other uneasy questions. If these are not their soldiers, then where is their army? And what happens when it finally arrives? The Emperor himself sat upon his throne of black stone, listening to his advisors argue. The old lords dismissed the fear as weakness. "We are the Empire," they said. "We have crushed greater enemies than this." But the younger lords looked troubled. They had read the reports, seen the broken colonies, heard the silence where once rebellion had burned. They felt the weight of something unseen pressing against them. That night, deep in the capital, a secret meeting took place. A group of high-ranking admirals gathered in a hidden chamber, far from the Emperor's gaze. One of them placed a stack of reports on the table. His voice was low and sharp. "These are not soldiers," he said. "These are only wanderers, merchants, strays, and yet they move like ghosts through our borders, leaving fear behind them. Entire systems bow to them without one human warship in sight. If this is the effect of their civilians, then what will happen when their true army comes?" Silence followed his words. Every admiral in the room felt the same chill. They were leaders of the strongest military the galaxy had ever known, yet they could not stop the unease crawling through their minds. For the first time in living memory, the Empire felt the taste of fear. Elsewhere, in the dark corners of the capital, whispers spread faster than light. Spies carried the tales to every noble house. A senator's aide swore that his master woke from nightmares, sweating, whispering the same words again and again. "They are coming!" But still, no human fleet appeared. No banners of war flew across the stars. The fear came not from battles, but from silence. The unknown was more powerful than any weapon, and the Empire could not fight it. One evening, as the twin suns of the capital set and the streets glowed red with light, a group of young soldiers gathered in a tavern. They had heard the rumors for weeks. One of them, a proud warrior with scars across his face, slammed his drink down and said, "It is only lies, stories to frighten children." Yet none of the others laughed. One by one they admitted the truth. Each of them had dreamed of humans. In their sleep, they saw faceless figures walking calmly across battlefields where even the strongest armies broke and ran. They saw burning skies, not from war, but from the weight of something they could not name. That night, the rumor became something more. It was no longer just a tale of strangers in the dark. It was a shadow pressing down on the entire empire. It reached every street, every barrack, every hall of power. Even the emperor's palace felt smaller beneath it, and so the question grew louder, echoing in every mind. If the empire already trembles at whispers, what will happen when the true human army finally arrives? The capital of the Galactic Empire was a world built on power. Its towers touched the sky, its palaces gleamed with silver and gold, and its streets ran with the pride of 1,000 conquered stars. Armies marched in endless drills, warships filled the skies above, and the emperor's banners flew across every wall. To the people, this city was the heart of the galaxy, a place that no enemy could ever touch. But shadows were already falling across its light. The rumors of humanity had reached the capital long before any humans did. First came whispers from soldiers. Then came reports from generals. Then came the nightmares, spreading through every level of society. By the time the first human envoys arrived, the city was already holding its breath. They did not arrive in fleets. They did not come with armies or weapons. Only a small shuttle descended into the starport, its surface scarred, old and unremarkable. From it stepped a handful of figures, humans, dressed in plain clothes, carrying no weapons, their eyes calm. The crowd that gathered to watch them was restless. Thousands had come, hoping to see monsters or demons. Instead, they saw ordinary beings, 2 men, a woman and a child. Yet the silence that followed their steps was heavier than any roar of battle. Even the guards who stood along the landing platforms felt their hands shake against their rifles. The humans did not bow, did not pause, did not wait for permission. They walked straight into the city, as if it belonged to them. Their eyes moved slowly, taking in the buildings, the soldiers, the weapons, but never with fear. Their faces showed only quiet curiosity, like explorers studying a new world. In the throne hall, the emperor waited. He sat on his dark seat, surrounded by lords, senators, and generals in glittering armor. The hall was designed to intimidate, built to make any visitor feel small before the empire's power. Statues of old conquerors stood in every corner. The banners of 1,000 wars hung heavy from the ceiling. But when the humans entered, the hall itself seemed to grow smaller, weaker. No words were spoken at first. The child walked a few steps ahead, gazing at the golden floor. The woman glanced at the high ceiling as if measuring it. One of the men met the emperor's eyes and simply smiled. That smile was not arrogant, not cruel, but calm. Too calm, the emperor's advisors expected the humans to kneel, to speak with respect. But the humans did none of these things. They stood silent, waiting. The silence grew longer, pressing against everyone in the hall. A senator cleared his throat but could not form words. A general opened his mouth but forgot what he meant to say. The only sound was the steady beating of hearts, each one faster than before. Finally, the emperor spoke. His voice echoed through the hall, deep and commanding. "Why have you come here without your armies?" The man answered softly, "Because we do not need them." The words were simple, almost gentle, but they fell like a blade into the hall. No one moved. The senators shifted uneasily. The generals exchanged looks. The emperor's face darkened, but even he did not speak for several breaths. The calm in the human's voice carried more weight than the empire's entire fleet. Outside, in the streets, the citizens felt the change. They did not know what was said in the throne room, but they saw the way soldiers stiffened, the way guards avoided the human's eyes, the way the air itself seemed heavier. Word spread faster than fire. The humans are here. They carry no weapons. They do not fear the throne. A general followed the humans as they left the palace. He kept his distance, his soldiers trailing behind, but his eyes never left them. He studied their steps, their movements, their silence. The more he watched, the more he felt a weakness inside himself that he could not explain. His hands shook, though his armor weighed hundreds of pounds. His throat dried, though he had spoken to kings and killers without fear. One of the humans turned suddenly, their eyes meeting his. The general froze. He had faced battlefields, monsters, assassins, and traitors. None of them had ever made him feel this small. He looked away first. That night, in a hidden chamber, the general wrote a message to his allies. His words were short and unsteady. "We cannot fight them. Even without armies, we are already broken." In the taverns of the capital, whispers spread. Some claimed the humans had no heartbeat. Others swore they could hear voices when they stood too close. Many said the child was the most terrifying of all, for he walked calmly through the streets as if he knew every secret of the empire. Fear moved like a plague. Merchants raised prices, soldiers refused night patrols, and nobles locked themselves in their towers. The empire had faced rebellions before, but never had it faced fear of this kind. It was not the fear of war. It was the fear of something unseen, something that could not be measured with weapons or fleets. The emperor held another council the next day. His voice was heavy with anger as he demanded answers. "They are only a handful. Why does this city tremble before them?" But no one had an answer. Even the bravest generals avoided his eyes. The silence was worse than any defeat, and still the humans did nothing. They walked the streets. They visited markets. They sat in gardens. They asked no favors, made no threats. Yet everywhere they went, shadows deepened. The Empire's capital, once the proudest city in the galaxy, now whispered like a haunted world. By the end of the week, untruth had spread across the galaxy. The humans had arrived at the heart of the Empire, and they had needed no army to bring it to its knees. The Empire had always believed fear came only through conquest. Armies marching across planets, fleets burning skies, thrones falling under the weight of soldiers and steel. But what spread now was something different, something no commander could measure, something no fleet could fight. It began quietly. On the second day after the humans arrived, a governor in the outer colonies surrendered his world. No fleet had attacked, no army had landed. He had only received word that humans were near. His soldiers dropped their weapons, and his council signed away control without resistance. When questioned, the governor gave only one answer: "I have no wish to test them." A week later, 3 pirate clans that had terrorized the border for generations suddenly fled their strongholds. Their fleets scattered, leaving ships behind in their rush to escape. When asked why, the prisoners they abandoned spoke with shaking voices. "Humans are coming," they said. "We will not face them." The Senate of the Empire tried to control the panic. They declared the rumors false. They ordered the news channels to silence the reports. They banned the word human from public speeches, but none of it worked. The fear had already entered the streets. Whispers spread faster than law. In marketplaces, merchants argued in low voices. "A single human stood against an entire army," one said. They did not fight, yet the army broke. In the barracks, young recruits asked their commanders, "What will happen when the human army finally arrives?" The commanders shouted at them to be silent, but even their own hands trembled as they gave orders. In secret, more governors began preparing ships for escape. Entire households packed treasures, ready to flee to the farthest edges of the galaxy. And yet no human fleet appeared. There were no banners, no war drums, no armies at all. Only silence and the fear of what might come. In one sector, a single human merchant ship docked at a spaceport. It was small, damaged and unarmed. But the moment its passengers walked out, the soldiers guarding the port stepped aside without command. Their captain raised his weapon, tried to give the order to hold the line, but his voice broke. By nightfall, the entire garrison had abandoned their posts. The planet declared independence, swearing loyalty not to the Empire, but to the name of humanity. The Emperor raged when he heard. His fist slammed the arm of his throne. "Where are our armies?" he demanded. "Why do they run without battle? Why do they surrender without war?" But even he could see the truth. His commanders were no longer fighting the humans. They were fighting their own fear. One senator whispered in council what many already thought, but dared not say aloud. "We are already defeated. Humanity's army is not here, yet the Empire crumbles." Their shadow conquers us before their ships ever arrive. In the dark alleys of the capital, strange stories spread. Some claimed humans carried the weight of their death world with them, that every step they took echoed the storms, the predators, the endless struggle that had shaped them. Others said their silence was the weapon, that to meet a human's gaze was to see yourself broken, crushed by fears you did not know you carried. The child was spoken of the most. Citizens whispered that he walked through the markets without fear, buying fruit, watching toys, speaking only a few words in a soft voice. Yet those who heard him swore they dreamed of him afterward. They woke at night, sweating, remembering his calm eyes, staring into their souls. Across the galaxy, entire fleets refused to move. Admirals made excuses, saying their engines needed repairs, but the truth was simpler. They did not want to meet the humans. Armies mutinied, refusing to fight. Colonies declared their independence, choosing silence over loyalty to the throne. The empire had built itself on order, but order was now cracking like glass. At first, the emperor believed he could use fear as a weapon. If his people feared humanity, then perhaps he could turn it into unity. He ordered propaganda spread across the capital, declaring that humanity was weak, that their mystery was only lies. But the attempt backfired. Soldiers laughed bitterly when they saw the posters. They knew the truth in their hearts. Words could not erase the silence they felt when standing near a human. In one infamous moment, a senator stood in the Great Hall, raising his voice to denounce the humans. He called them cowards, wanderers, nothing more than shadows. But when the humans entered the hall uninvited, he stopped speaking. His throat closed. His voice died. He collapsed before he could finish his sentence. The hall was silent as the humans walked past him without a glance. From that day forward, no senator dared to speak against them again. Fear became the true ruler of the empire. Not the emperor, not the throne, not the fleets. Fear itself. And that fear carried only one name: humanity. Across the stars, alien races whispered the same question. If this is what happens without war, then what will happen when the real human army arrives? The question spread, growing heavier with every passing day. It sat like a storm on the horizon, waiting, waiting, waiting. And though the horizon remained quiet, the Empire could not escape the feeling that the storm was already here. The Empire had been trembling for weeks. Worlds had surrendered, soldiers had abandoned posts, and entire fleets had refused to fight, all without facing a single battle. Humanity's presence alone had been enough to break them. Yet still, no one had seen what the humans truly called their army. That changed on a night when the stars burned strangely bright. At the far edge of Imperial space, sensors detected movement. At first, commanders thought it was a storm of asteroids. Then they realized it was a single object moving at impossible speed. When the data reached the capital, alarms rang in every command center. The Emperor himself rose from his throne when he heard the report. A human warship has entered our borders. Every admiral, every general, every senator was summoned to the Grand War Chamber. Holograms lit the room, showing the dark shape drifting through the void. It was only one ship, small compared to the Empire's massive dreadnoughts. Its hull was scarred, worn, marked by battles from another age. Yet as the room studied it, silence swallowed their voices. The sensors told them the truth they did not wish to hear. Their scanners failed to measure its power. Their systems shut down when they tried to lock on. Weapons arrays flickered and went dark. Entire fleets in its path reported sudden malfunctions, as if the ship's very presence had silenced their technology. "It is old," one admiral whispered, "but it feels alive." Across the border, an Imperial fleet of 30 warships moved to intercept. The commanders broadcast threats, declaring that the intruder would be destroyed. But when the human ship drew closer, something happened that no one could explain. The Imperial fleet broke apart. Ships turned on each other, firing wildly in panic. Others shut down their engines and drifted. Entire crews abandoned control, fleeing into escape pods, though no shot had been fired. The human vessel continued forward, silent, calm, unhurried, as if it had no need to fight at all. When the reports reached the capital, the Senate erupted in chaos. Senators shouted at one another, demanding explanations. Generals swore their soldiers would not break again, but even as they spoke, their own voices shook. The emperor demanded to see the ship himself. A great viewing hall was prepared. From the safety of orbit, the rulers of the empire gathered to watch as the lone human warship entered their skies. It came slowly, without escort, without ceremony. Its surface bore no banners, no shining colors. It carried no words, no threats. Yet every eye in the hall was locked on it, every breath caught in fear. The longer they watched, the more the truth pressed against their minds. This was only a single ship, a fragment, a whisper, and still the empire trembled. One senator broke the silence, his voice thin and hollow. "If this is a single ship, what happens when their full army arrives?" No one answered. No one could. The emperor, proud and unbending all his life, felt his hand tremble upon the arm of his throne. He had ruled through war, through rebellion, through crisis. He had crushed empires, burned planets, and bent galaxies to his will. Yet as he stared at the human vessel hanging calmly in orbit, he understood something his people had already begun to whisper. They could not win. The generals tried to plan. They spoke of new weapons, of ambushes, of desperate attacks. But each word felt weak. Each sentence died before it was finished. For what use were weapons against an enemy who did not need to fight? In the streets below, the citizens gathered to look at the sky. Mothers held children close. Soldiers stared at their hands, unable to grip their rifles. Merchants closed their shops in silence. No orders were given, but the city seemed to know. The arrival of this single ship had already changed everything. Some swore they heard a sound when the vessel passed overhead, a low hum, like the voice of the galaxy itself. Others said they felt their hearts beating with strange rhythms, as if the ship's presence had reached inside their bodies. Many refused to look at all, closing their doors, hiding their faces, whispering prayers. That night, the city did not sleep. Lights burned in every tower, every barrack, every home. Fear moved through the streets like wind. And high above, the ship remained silent, watching, waiting. In the war chamber, the emperor finally spoke. His voice was no longer thunder. It was low, heavy, broken. "If this is the beginning, then the end has already come." The council sat in silence. No one dared to argue. No one dared to hope. The truth was clear. The Empire had just seen a glimpse of humanity's real army, and even that glimpse was enough to shatter their spirit. No weapons had been fired. No orders had been given. But the galaxy knew the truth. The war was already over. Humanity did not need to conquer. The Empire had already defeated itself. The human warship did not move. It floated above the capital world like a shadow that could not be pushed away. No weapons fired. No soldiers descended. No demands were made. Yet the silence it carried was louder than war drums. For 3 days, the Empire waited. At first, its generals claimed they would strike. They gathered fleets, issued commands, and promised to destroy the lone vessel. But when their warships rose into orbit, they stopped short. Some engines refused to ignite. Others turned and fled. Commanders shouted into broken radios as entire crews abandoned their stations. The fleets dissolved before the first shot could be fired. The ship remained untouched. In the capital, the Senate collapsed into chaos. Senators shouted, blaming one another, accusing their rivals of betrayal. Some fled the chambers altogether, boarding private ships to escape the system. Others locked themselves inside their estates, refusing to answer calls. The Empire's laws had no power anymore. Fear had replaced them. The Emperor tried to hold his throne. He summoned his remaining generals, ordering them to stand strong. But when he looked into their eyes, he saw the truth. They were already lost. Their hands shook. Their voices cracked. These were not warriors ready for battle. They were men and women staring into a storm they could not face. "Your duty is to me," the Emperor roared. His words shook the great hall, but no one met his gaze. Some looked to the floor, others to the shadows, and one general simply whispered, "We cannot fight them." Those words spread faster than any order. Within hours, soldiers abandoned their posts. Some threw down their rifles in the streets. Others fled into the countryside. Whole regiments disappeared into the night, leaving their banners trampled in the mud, and still the human ship did nothing. Across the galaxy, the collapse grew like wildfire. One colony after another declared independence. Some claimed loyalty to humanity, though no human had spoken to them. Others simply walked away from the Empire, unwilling to bleed for a throne already crumbling. Pirate fleets, once hunted by Imperial warships, now raised their flags openly. The chains of the Empire fell apart not with battle, but with silence. On the fourth day, the Emperor gave his last speech. His voice echoed through the palace halls, but it was thin, brittle, stripped of its old power. "We are still the Empire. We still have our fleets. But he stopped. His words failed him because he knew they were lies. He looked out at the chamber, at the empty seats where senators once sat, at the silent generals who no longer saluted, and he saw the truth. The Empire was already dead. That night the Emperor vanished. Some said he fled into exile. Others whispered that he took his own life. His throne stood empty, the black stone cold and unguarded. For the first time in centuries, the people did not mourn. They did not riot. They did not rebel. They simply stopped believing in the Empire. And with belief gone, the greatest power in the galaxy dissolved like smoke in the wind. Above, the human warship finally stirred. Its engines glowed faintly as it turned away from the capital. No fleet tried to stop it. No weapons were raised. The ship drifted back into the stars, silent as it had arrived. When it was gone, a final realization spread through every mind in the galaxy. The humans had never needed an army. The fear of what might come had already done what no fleet, no rebellion, no uprising had ever achieved. The Empire was broken, not by battles, not by weapons, but by its own fear of an enemy it did not understand. In the markets, in the barracks, in the empty Senate halls, the same words were whispered again and again. The army they feared never came, because it did not need to. Across the galaxy, silence reigned. The banners of the Empire fell one by one, fluttering down into dust. In their place rose the shadow of humanity, not through conquest, but through the terror of the unseen, and somewhere, far beyond the stars, the true human armies still waited.